Alrighty. Hope you guys had a happy Thanksgiving. It's been a while. So today's goal, I'm going to be explaining infusion gems. I figured it's the 10th anniversary, so it's a really good time to talk about infusion gems and to talk about the game's most valuable resource. Most people will find that they run out of infusion gems the fastest, and their ability to improve is hindered most by the lack of infusion gems. So I figured I should make a video on how to correctly infuse so that you're not wasting your gems on anything that you shouldn't be infusing, and go over how to do it most efficiently and some other tips and tricks how to get infusion gems and all that stuff. As you can see, I am pretty darn close to 5 mil, so I'll break the 5 mil barrier in this video, and I'll go over all the infusion stuff. So I guess you should start with what are infusions and why should you care? They are here. And basically, infusions are a way to increase gear score. As you can see, this piece of gear here is fully infused, and it gives me 100,000 magic defense. And this one here is not infused at all, and it only gives me 55. So gear score is really important, especially for your weapons. For most attack classes, it's super vital. Even for defense, a lot of good classes scale with both a attack stat and a defense stat. So you need higher stats to do more damage, especially in the defense and magic defense area. A lot of people neglect those. So I think that is very important. We're going to go over how to infuse correctly and what you should be looking for. So I guess the first thing that I should go with, to explain is how do you even see your infusion gems? You go to items, others, you got the drops of ether here, and then you've got more at the bottom. These droplets, you need 10 to create one. And as you can see, I've got 40. The ones at the top will expire. They have their own date. As you can see, this one expires in 32 days, and those will be used first whenever you're doing infusions. Next, I'll go over how to get them. The most common way is, there are 3 pretty common ways. The recycle metals recycle their spawn every month, so you can buy drops of ether and droplets of ether every month. You get these metals by selling SR gear and SSR gear, and it just automatically happens when you sell them. I would recommend most people buy the drop of ether every single month. If you are a little bit whaley or you have lots of these recycle metals, then you can go for droplets as well. The next place is going to be the Coliseum. If Coliseum metals are not a problem for you, every time Coliseum comes out, the top thing is going to be a limited time drop of ether. I would recommend doing that if it's not if you don't need the Coliseum metals for your gear awakening. A lot of these gear awakenings do require Coliseum metals. Like this one requires Coliseum metals. If you don't have your Xenos gear maxed, then don't be worrying about this as much. If you have excess, I would say if you have more than 200 to 300. There is one stage where you need 500 of these, but I think with the new bingo missions, you should be able to get those because they give you Coliseum medals when you do Coliseum stuff. So I'm not too worried about that, but if you find that you have extra, like me, I have way more than I need, then you can absolutely use those. I would never recommend using your emerald metals for these droplets of ether. Never, ever, ever do this unless you have been playing for a really long time, in which case you don't really need this tutorial as much. And even then, it's still risky. And then Mobius. It's not in the Mobius metals, but I just figured I'd talk about Mobius. When you actually do it, you get drops of ether for completing it ranking-wise, both in your total and your single best runs. So I'd recommend at least running Mobius a few times, trying to get as far as you can. If you need to know how to make a good PvE set, go check out my other, I made a recent video on how to make a good PvE set. That's all about Mobius. There's also one thing I don't have, and that is the Limmy cookies. I've been waiting for like 3 days now. I still haven't gotten any, so I just figured I'd make the video anyway. We'll just pretend like these are limit cookies. You get the limit cookies from sending out your pet every day, and or like every 4 hours if you're not a VIP of a certain amount. But yeah, you can get quite a few droplets of ether from that as well. Okay, so let's talk about what you should be infusing, because we talked about these are really, really rare. Oh, I should also talk about events. Always check your events. This one in particular has a ton of these droplets of ether and drops of ether. I mean, tons of them. So always do your events as well. So let's go over, what you should even be infusing. Always look for highest cost gear, and you can do that by going to any spawn. So this is 43, so you want to go through every single one. This one's 43 cost. This one's 44. That means that we're on 44 cost. If you want to be super specific, you can always go to Limipedia, which is like a breakdown of all of their stuff. And you can check there. But generally, there's always a spawn with the highest gear stuff. You only want to be using infusion gems on the highest gear stuff. So these two were 43s. This one's a 44, which means that 44 is the newest. So just focus on 44 cost stuff. Please stop wasting infusion gems on old gear unless it is extremely valuable gear. There are a few exceptions, like reflection reduction XXL gear, that once you hit to level 7, it becomes the single item gives you 100% resistance to reflection. There are some other examples as well. For example, I will be infusing this, which is a 43 cost gear. It is not a 44 cost gear. I'll be infusing this today. And the reason why is because this right here is incredibly powerful. Reducing ability power by 3x for both physical and magical is unbelievably strong. I can survive starbursts, which this only reflects physical and magical damage by XL, and starburst is it pierces that, which means that if I proc that eternity proc against starburst, I will not be reflecting any damage back, because this one ignores damage reduction and damage reflection. So this ability just completely ignores that. But because that proc also reduces the ability power, both physical and magical, what happens is this ability already has such a low ability power. It only has 70 ability power. I think it can go up a little bit more than that, but it doesn't have high ability power. So what happens is this has such low ability power that if I double proc the eternity, this gets reduced to basically no ability power, and my base stats are enough to be able to protect me, so I take 0 damage. So this is one of the few examples of something that's unique, but if there's something extremely unique like that, absolutely max it. This is gear I'm going to be using for a long time. So the next thing, now that we know what you should be infusing, which is the 44 cost gear right now, but whatever's the highest cost gear, how should you actually be doing it? Well, there are two stages to infusions. There are the first three blue ones. You can see this one. There are the first three blue ones, and then there are the two purple ones. The first three blue ones are always the cheapest, and they don't actually increase your proc rate or anything like that. These specifically talk about once they get maxed to level 5, but it is believed, and it has been believed for a very long time, that when you level up to 6 and to level 7, which are unlocked with the first and second infusions of the purple infusions, then they increase in potency and proc rate. It's been believed that for a long time. They released this more detailed description about this gear and what they do. So now it's a little bit more debated, but regardless, when you hit level 6 and when you hit level 7, then it's believed that it at least procs more often. So you don't want to just level up your stuff to level like the first three infusions that are the cheap ones. You want to make sure that whenever you start investing in a piece of gear, that you fully infuse it. You don't want to leave gear like this. Don't be like me, fully infuse all of your gear, and I'll show you how. So there are, when you're actually going in and infusing something, there are 3 different brackets. You have your identical gear. So this is gear that is the exact same in every single way. So these 3, I have a bunch of them that are all the exact same. And then you have, and this is this gear right here for the first 3 slots for the 3 blue slots in the infusion gear. They're gonna cost you 0 infusion gems. The fourth, the 2 purple ones, the first purple will cost you 1 infusion gem. The second one will cost you 2. I can actually show you that right here. I was gonna go over this as well. This is called a perfect infusion. And I have some old gear that I was gonna do this to, but never got around to it. So as you can see, this is the exact same gear. And so on the left here, I'm not gonna press it, but on the left down here, it is 1 gem for the first step, and it's 2 gems for the second step. So if I do a perfect infusion, then it would cost 3 gems in total. And I can actually go over why I did it this way. This is how you want to do most of your infusions. You want to do 3 into 1 piece of gear and 2 into another piece of gear. Or just 1 into another piece of gear. And then when you infuse the first one with the second one, then you want to do the perfect infusion. And that's because of the cost that it takes to jump from the first infusion of the purple to the second infusion of the purple. So from here to here is a huge jump in the amount of infusion gems. And because you're going to be using the newest gear, you're not going to have a lot of it. This is old gear, so I have a lot of it. But let's say that I wanted to infuse like my dual blades here. I only have 2 other dual blades because the 44 cost gear hasn't been out for a while. So I don't want to use a bunch of different gear. Let me just explain from the simplest level. The second level, we'll get back to this. The second level is gear that is identical in cost or more, and it matches the type. For example, these are helms, and this one's also going to be a helm, and this one's going to be a helm. And the reason why is because what I'm trying to infuse is a helm. This is one of the pieces I'm trying to infuse, but you can see right here it's a helm. So I can only use other helms If I was infusing hats, I'd only be able to use other hats in this second bar. And if I was doing clothes, armor, same way. The only difference is weapons. As long as they're from the same class, then it doesn't matter. So for example, a book, this is a book, as you can see right here, it's a book. And if I use a relic, it's fine. That's the only case where it's okay to use something else is when you're talking about weapons, but they have to be from the same main classes. So the third level is everything else. And this is the most expensive level. Everything is always going to cost more down here. And I would always recommend, I know it's a long scroll, but I would always recommend using your weakest gear in this slot. And that's because you're not really using your weakest gear most of the time anyway. So this is a nice way to get rid of it. Alrighty. So let's go over costs. So how much does it actually cost for each of these things? Let's say I'm just gonna do this one. So to do the bad infusion, the one that costs the most, it's 3 for the first 3 blues. The blues always cost the same. So it's 3 per, so that would be 9 total for just the blues. Okay. How much would it cost to infuse this piece of gear here? Or here, actually, I think I have to do this one, which again, look at the cost. You should never be doing this, like actually going through with it, but this is just an example. So this one, you can see it costs 1 in the bottom left here. And like we talked about earlier, the perfect infusions will cost 0. I don't think I have this on any of my sets. So let's see. Actually, no, I definitely do have this on one of my sets. Hang on. Let me find something I don't think I have. Boom. Yeah. See? 0. Okay. And that's going to be for all of the blues. Okay. What about the non-blues? Well, I have it set up for you here so I can take a look. So for the first one, this is a piece of gear that I'll be using later. But for the first purple one, when you're talking about the most expensive, it's 15 infusion gems just for the first one. Okay? And let's see how much it is for the second one. I'll just take a random piece of gear. I'll do... Oh, look at that. I already have some stuff. Actually, I don't want to keep that stuff. I'll use this one. Okay. And for the second one, from going from 1 purple to 2 purples, getting it maxed out, costs 25. This is why you never want to use the regular garbage gear to infuse any of the purples. This is why you don't use that gear for this, because it is so expensive. Now, I'll show you an example of the same gear. Let's see, I don't think I have this on anything. Nope, I do. Okay, I'll just have to go back to that scythe or that lance that I was looking at earlier. So if you're looking at the same, let's say you're trying to get to the purple and you wanted to use a piece of gear. Really? Wait, no, it's under the filter. That's why it's not showing. Okay, so if you're using a similar piece of gear, so not the gear that's down here, that's in the third bracket, the most expensive bracket. We're talking about the second bracket, which is not as expensive. Then the first one costs 5, and the second one costs 10. And that one I actually will be doing later. It's going to be this one. So this one, you can see it's in the second bracket and it costs 10 right here. So to get to the 2 purples, if you're using the really expensive method, the 2 purples are going to cost you 40 infusion gems. Now, if you just have 2 similar pieces of gear, then instead of costing you 40, they're going to cost you 5 plus 10, that's 15. So we just cut back that gear massively. And we already talked about the most perfect infusion gems. If you have the same exact gear, when you go to purple, the first one's gonna cost you 1, the second one's gonna cost you 2. So how can you use less gear, less of this trash to infuse more of your stuff efficiently? Well, as you can see here, I'm kind of ruining it for you, but let me just do the whole process for you. What we're gonna do is I'm gonna infuse this in just a second, fully infuse it, and this one is what I'm gonna be using to infuse it. And so what I want to do is I want to put 1 infusion into this, which will cost 3 infusion gems because it's in the second bracket. And then I'm gonna infuse this piece of gear, this one, 3 times. And then I'm going to use the perfect infusion so that instead of costing 5 for just 1, it'll cost 15, but I'll be able to get both of them. So let me show you that. So first, I'm gonna infuse this 3 times. I'm just gonna reverse cost so that I don't have to scroll as much. And here, let me actually do it with like pieces of gear so that you can see what the process looks like most of the time. I can use these 3, sure. Actually, I'll just use this one and this one. Okay. So, first one costs 3. Second one would cost 3, as you can see in the bottom left, but I'm gonna perfect infuse it so that I can get, I don't waste as much gear, just so I can get to this, the final blue. And the second one would cost 3 as well. 3 plus 3 is 6. So total, I've spent 9 so far, just on this piece of gear. And the next thing is we're gonna go find that other piece of gear, and I have to, so this is what I'm infusing. And now I need a piece of gear to put in this. So I'll throw in, oh, yeah. I'll throw that one in. So now I have infused this fodder gear once, and the original gear twice. So now I'm gonna use this. Do you see how this works? I'm gonna use this one that has 1 infusion and into the one that has 3 infusions already, this one. Now, if I try to do this, look, it's not letting me do it. Even though it is no longer favorited, I can't use it. Why is that? Because if you have a gear set saved that has this garbage gear right here, you can't use it. The game won't let you. So you have to get rid of that. And it can be really troubling. I mean, imagine that if you're trying to use this piece of gear, this blue one, and it could be just on a random set. It can be really frustrating at times. I wish that the game had a better way of showing you what you're going to use. But anyway, just get rid of that gear set or save over it again. And when I go back in, there it is. So now I can use it. So you can see the first one would cost 5 infusion gems, and the second one would cost you 10. So if I perfect infuse, it costs 15. Okay, so then I would go ahead and do this. And then to get to level 7, you just use the biggest ones. Does that make sense to everyone? It should, because I have seen a lot of people worried about this. It is really confusing. Oh, I did not level up. It is really confusing early on, but you want to use other pieces of gear to level up your gear. And that will reduce the amount of waste, because imagine if every single time that I wanted to infuse, it does cost a few more gems, but imagine every time I wanted to infuse one of these hats, I would need 3 regular pieces of gear and then 2 43 cost hats. I mean, that is so expensive for an average player that it's just not reasonable. So this is a more cost-effective way of infusing your gear, and over time, as a free-to-play player, you can absolutely get a full set of gear. I had another account where I was building it more free-to-play, and I had over 100 drops of ether, because if you play the game well and properly, you can acquire tons of drops of ether, as long as you're not wasting them just on random stuff. And I promised that I was gonna get over 5 mil, so let's do that. So, infusing with similar piece of gear, I'm gonna waste some pluses, but it's not a big deal. And get it to level 7. And broke the 5 mil barrier. Alrighty. So now we've kind of viewed some things. So when should you use a perfect infusion like this? And when should you use a better infusion, or like a more expensive infusion, like the ones that I just did? And the answer to that really comes down to procs. Unfortunately, there's not an easy way to go over every single proc and what makes a good proc, but I kind of explained why these procs are so good defensively. This helps you in PvE and it helps you in PvP. Extremely valuable, super strong procs. I would recommend checking Discords. A-Team's got an official Discord. Whenever stuff comes out, you can ask about it. Generally speaking, the more big numbers you see, so like just clicking on this one, for like weapons, more big numbers is good. Critting is good. And making sure that you can scale it effectively. Those are the 3 things that you want. You want the more, the bigger the ability power boost is, the bigger the chances when you're actually using the gear. Like this is just L, but I'm sure I can find something that's not. Look, this one's XL. This one means that when you have it maxed out, it has a better chance of proccing. And this one has more big numbers. Look at that. XXL to 5XL and 6XL plus. I mean, this is when you perform a crit, but you're performing crits all the time, especially with all the buffs out nowadays. And look at that, 7XL when you're doing damage. So these procs are incredibly strong. You want to look for big numbers. You want to look for crits or things that power off of crits or breaks. You want big ability power boost. The bigger the ability power boost, the better. The more often they proc, the better. You just want to make sure that you can actually scale them. That's like a simple breakdown of what you should be looking for when you do perfect infusions versus not perfect infusions. If it's not a great piece of gear, like for example, this one is not a great piece of gear. As you can see, it's only XL and 3XL, so total of like what, 4XL plus, and it only procs as an L, not even an L plus, and it scales off of 10. I mean, that is crazy. So this would not be a great item, unfortunately. And just because of that, if I am looking to make a set, a PvE set, a PvP set. I want to do more damage, but I have this gear and I can easily increase my gear score by just throwing in some garbage stuff. Then for an earlier player, especially when you're working on your PvP sets and you don't have all of your gear, then this is acceptable. You wouldn't want to make this a staple in any of your guild battle sets per se, but you can absolutely use this for a PvE set. Let me go over something that's a little bit more new. So for example, I have 3 of these relics. As you can see, 1, 2, 3. It's pretty ridiculous. I don't know how I got so lucky with this. But so like, let's say that I was wondering, like, should I waste tons of gems and fully infuse all 3 of them like I did with my hats just now, or like I did with these, like I'm doing with these dresses. I'm going to infuse this one as well at some point, like I did with those. Or should I use them as fodder and put them into themselves so that it's cheaper? And the simple answer is you just look at the procs. You got 4XL, 5XL when critting, and 5XL, easily scalable, does L. I would say overall, this is a pretty solid piece of gear. Would I want 3 of them out of the 10 total weapons that I want? Probably not. I probably want some other stuff, because this gear that we were just talking about, it scales off of when performing a crit. Okay, but this doesn't guarantee me to crit. So then I should probably have a piece of gear that guarantees that I crit. For example, this is not a new piece of gear. I would not recommend this, but just as an example, because I know that this is a crit gear, this one performs a crit. So I would want some gear that performs a crit, some gear that scales off of when you actually do crit. That's like a general example, but it also depends on, what else you have in your set, what you're looking for, if you need more cost, if you need more uni. There's a lot of things to consider, but generally speaking, if you can infuse something for cheap and it's the newest gear, the highest cost gear that's currently out, generally that's a good thing, and that is pretty cheap. If you're absolutely certain that a piece of gear is just the gnarliest proc you've ever seen, and you want as much of it as you can, like this shit, when I tested it, I was blown away. I could survive basically against every single class pretty damn well, if not exceptionally well, way better than my other stuff, because it procs so much. And because I had so much of this gear, I could double proc it, and the ability power reduction was insane. I was like, this gear is absolutely fucking cracked. I need as much of it as I can, maxed. And it was only through testing in the testing rooms that I did that. And if you don't know, the testing rooms are chat room, dual room, and either one, but I can just go into one of these. And the idea is that you just click on this guy, you join a team, and then when you have an enemy on the enemy team, they can ready up, and then you can go. And it's like a colo match. You can test a bunch of procs. If you're looking to fight monsters, instead of wasting your AP, you can go to the Labyrinth of Tartarus, and this one costs 0 AP to run. So there's 20 waves, there's lots of testing that you can do. You can throw monsters, you can do different sets, but there are absolutely ways to test gear. I would recommend joining a guild, finding some buddies, talking to people, and don't believe people, do your own testing, be your own informant, as you will. Don't just believe, if somebody says this is an insane proc, don't just believe them. Don't waste your valuable gems to get the gear and then your more valuable infusion gems infusing it. I'll hopefully be able to go over ability procs and all that stuff later, but it's a big subject. So hopefully you found this helpful. See you guys.